Hello everybody, my name is KingStix, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you 10 champions that are extremely powerful right now that you can abuse even if you are in low elo to get some massive ranked gains. The main inspiration for this video is the recent meta shift towards tankier junglers, which has greatly impacted all the other roles in League of Legends. For those of you who are curious, there are 3 key buffs that brought tank junglers back into the meta, thus changing up pretty much everything. The first one was the Bramble Vest buff. It changed Bramble Vest and Thornmail Grievous Wounds duration to last from 1 second to 3 seconds. This was huge. Next up was a massive Cinderhulk buff, changing its magic damage from 200% to 300% bonus damage against minions and monsters. This gives tanks way more jungle pressure. They can clear camps faster and even shove minion waves faster once they have their Cinderhulk. And the third and final change that brought tank junglers back into the picture is the Rift Scuttler change. Rift Scuttle used to spawn in at the 2-minute mark. That meant that red buff junglers would start red, gank, and then Rift Scuttle would be up. They could take it, gank again, and do the other Rift Scuttle. So what would happen is if a tank jungler went for Scuttle, they would die or get pushed off, and if they didn't, they'd miss out on loads of gold and experience, thus putting tanks in a very bad spot. So they did change it from 2 minutes to 3:15. Now tank junglers can more comfortably contest it, or at the very least not lose too much too early. I just wanted to get that out of the way. These are the 3 main changes of why the tank meta jungle is coming back so strong. This is going to be a list of the 10 strongest champions out of every role, so I'm going to be choosing the 2 strongest solo queue champions out of every role that are good in low elo and high elo. Let's start off with the junglers. The second strongest jungler right now, in my humble opinion, that I have personally been abusing a lot lately is Nunu. Nunu really did benefit from all 3 of the tank jungle. Nunu benefited quite a bit from all the recent jungle changes. The one that affected him the least was probably the Scuttle Crab change, since he had decent Scuttle Crab pressure as is for the most part. What's making Nunu so good right now is the fact that there's a lot more tank junglers, and it's also taking away a lot of pep from early game junglers like Xin Zhao, Lee Sin, Kindred, and Jarvan, who would normally kill Nunu early game and force him out of the river areas. Another beautiful thing about playing against tanky junglers as Nunu is most tank junglers do mostly magic damage. Take Ramus, Sejuani, or Zac for instance. All of their spells for the most part do magic damage, and they're very low damage champions. Against Nunu, this is perfect because Nunu typically likes to build a Spirit Visage anyways. It's usually one of his core items. So whenever you get in a fight with someone, you just chomp him and move on. You take very little damage and you can just proceed to CC and pill for your team. When playing as Nunu, I'd recommend playing him against a tank jungler. Picking him against things like Kindred can be very difficult, especially if you are in higher elo, because they will bully you off of many things. Before you take Nunu jungle into ranked, I'd recommend spending at least 10 minutes in the practice tool, turning all the cooldowns, and then practicing using your snowball around walls and through turrets, because Nunu's snowball hitbox is very deceiving. When you roll it, it's very tiny, but on impact it's massive, and you can CC a lot of opponents at once if they're relatively close to each other. And the number 1 strongest jungler right now in low and high elo is Ramus. All 3 of the jungle changes had a huge impact on Ramus, catapulting him to a consistent number 1 spot in the jungle. Even if you look at OPGG, he is rated number 1 with a whopping 8% pick rate. There's really no tank that scales as hard as Ramus does in the late game. Even Nunu doesn't scale quite as hard as a Ramus, and Ramus is really the tankiest jungler, assuming that they've applied Grievous Wounds to everyone. And if that happens to Nunu and you nerf his healing with Grievous Wounds, he's in a lot of trouble. Ramus doesn't rely off of HP regen or healing to be tanky. He's inherently tanky because of his items and his W. The funniest part about Ramus is he can essentially one-shot an 80 carry in the mid and late game just by running into them, E, ulti, and let your Aftershock and Thornmail do all the work. No matter what elo you're in, try out Ramus. He is the strongest jungler right now without a doubt. You can get some insane picks throughout all phases of the game and carry your team on a reliable tanky champion. Next up, let's look at our top laners. Before I say who they are, I just want to mention a big thing that is making top laners strong right now is primarily Conqueror. Since the tank meta is relatively strong, having someone who has Conqueror and just shreds right through them is extremely valuable. Thus, making number 2 on our list after a string of buffs last patch is Aatrox. He has a whopping 12% pick rate and still has a relatively high win rate at 52%. I know I sure hate to play against him in the top lane, I just won't do it. And playing against him on the enemy team is just so difficult, especially in the early and mid game. Yes, in the true late game he does fall off quite a bit, but his early and mid game is insane. Just so much CC, so much healing, and he's pretty quick once he does have his ultimate. Things that give Aatrox trouble are typically non-traditional top laners like Vayne or Heimerdinger, things that can poke him down and avoid actually letting him touch them altogether. So as long as you're picking Aatrox against a traditional normal top laner, you should be good to go. The main reason for this is Aatrox only really gets healing out of hitting enemy champions, so if the enemy top laner doesn't pick something melee, it can make things quite difficult for you. And the number one top laner right now that you should be abusing is Riven. She is absolutely out of control, taking full advantage of Conqueror to the fullest. Unlike Aatrox, Riven can play into ranged matchups much more easily. Abusing items like Dorn Shield and taking full use of her E shield dash allows her to mitigate ranged champions early games and allow herself to slowly overtake them in the long run. It's also very difficult to match Riven's mobility. With just one flashy play, she can get in on the whole enemy team and make a real mess. If you're really good at Riven, you don't really have any counters, but if you are relatively new at playing Riven, you should try to avoid Garens and Renekton since it is a highly skill matchup. Due to the tank meta, there is a massive shift in meta in the mid lane. Previously, lethality mid laners were pretty much untouched, things like Zed and Talon. Don't get me wrong, they're still good because of their roaming potential. A big issue with them is that since they do rely on lethality so much, they don't have too much impact against this tank meta, since one full armor item can completely negate several lethality items. Instead, what you're going to be wanting to look for right now in the mid lane is more AP style champions. At number 2 on our list, we have Ahri. She is in an amazing spot right now. She has a lot of mobility, roaming potential, push potential, and she's good at all points in the game, early, mid, and late game. An amazing aspect of Ahri is even though she's an AP mage, her Q has a lot of true damage in it, so even if the enemy tanks are building MR, you should still have a lot of shredding potential with your Q true damage and ignite. Ahri is really strong against anything that isn't that mobile. Any champion who doesn't have a dash or a very strong blink, she's really good against due to her mobility and charm. They have no real way to close the distance. In terms of things that counter her, there's not a whole lot. The only thing that really comes to mind is a Malzahar ult, which really counters everything, and then a Zilean ult, which counters her kit in a lot of ways, since Ahri relies off of one-shotting a champion with her charm full combo, and a 1 Zilean R after she charms will completely negate that. I do highly recommend getting out there and playing Ahri in the mid lane. I don't think you'll regret it. And the number one strongest mid laner right now is Malzahar. For the same reasons as Ahri, he is also strong in this meta. Even though he doesn't have true damage, he has some insane max % health shred once he does have his Leandries and Rylias. With his core items, he can shred down squishies and tanks alike, no issues. The reason why we're putting Malzahar ahead of Ahri is he's a lot more consistent with his abilities, especially when it comes to his ultimate. If an AD assassin's going in, or if there's a squishy out of place, or if anyone on the enemy team's out of place, Malzahar can just flash ult, or if they're in range, he can just ult instantly, one frame, hold them still for his team, and they will die. This is by far one of the most suppressing abilities in the game that you cannot get out of with cleanse, and you have to have a QSS to get out of a suppression. I understand that Malzahar is boring, but trust me, playing against anything that relies off of staying mobile like LeBlanc, Rise, or 𝐒𝐿𝐼, and you will get free wins. Just press R and watch them die. Champions that counter Malzahar are champions that can negate a lot of his automatic CC with his ultimate and silence. Things like Nocturne with his spell shield, and he can also pretty much one-shot Malzahar. Also 𝐒𝐿, since 𝐒𝐿's ultimate allows him to run you down without taking any CC. Those kind of champions can give you a lot of issues, but if you position correctly, they shouldn't be a problem. Next up, we're going to be looking at the 2 strongest AD carries. Currently at number 2, we have Caixa. She is absolutely brilliant because she can go AP, AD, or hybrid. She has insane max percent health damage and is good at all points during the game, and especially in the late game is where she truly shines. Caixa's biggest downside is her shorter range as an AD carry. Things with long range like Xerath, Jinx, Kog'Maw can give her issues because she just can't get into auto attack range comfortably. Try to avoid those matchups. If you can pick her against short range AD carries like Kalista and Lucian, or if you have a really good support, you'll be good to go and be scaling very comfortably. Out of all the AD carries, Caixa probably performs the best against assassins and one-shot champions because of her ultimate's instant shield and reposition. Heaps of power in that, not to mention her invisibility. She's incredibly hard to try to pick off at the start of a fight. Get the hang of using your ultimate at the right times and saving your invisibility, and you will be carrying heaps of games on Caixa. And the number one strongest AD carry right now for carrying solo queue and low elo or high elo is Vayne. She's similar to Caixa in a lot of ways with her invisibility and with her tumble. The main difference between Vayne and Caixa is Vayne has way more single target damage. Yes, Caixa can make proper use of a hurricane, but when it comes to single target penetrating damage, no one really beats out Vayne. And now more than ever, that feature is extremely valuable since the tanks are stacking armor like crazy. Tank meta is back. Vayne can shred them regardless, it really doesn't matter. Once she has Rage Blade and Phantom Dancer, she can kill everyone realistically at the same speed. Due to her shorter range, she suffers from a lot of things that Caixa does. Champions with longer range can give her trouble. Things like Xerath, Nico, Jinx can be very annoying for her. And she does really well against lower damage or shorter range AD carries like Kalista, Lucian, and Jhin. Once Jhin gets his rapid fire cannon though, obviously it can be kind of annoying. You can just evade his auto though for the most part, as he goes to cast it by going invisible, tumbling, and killing him in 2 or 3 autos. And what would a strong AD carry be without their support? Currently, the strongest support, whether it's low elo or high elo, at number 2 is Lux. This was a bit of a toss up in my opinion between Lux and Thresh, since Thresh has a much higher skill cap and has to be more in the thick of the fight. Lux for the most part can just sit back, pill for her teammates, and hold on to her abilities. Lux offers some insane CC with a double 2-second root, not to mention her AoE slow that gets all the way up to a 45% slow. And unlike Thresh and many other high CC supports, she has an insane AoE shield that can completely make or break a team fight depending on how many allies she hits with it and if she uses it at the right time. Another amazing thing about Lux, other than her awesome peeling and CC, is her damage. Unlike most AP supports, she can actually one-shot targets depending on her build or how fed she is. She is a really nice mix between a Vel'Koz and a Janna with her kit. She's heaps of fun to play, and I highly recommend her to anyone who isn't comfortable with melee supports. And the number one support right now, without a doubt, in low and high elo is Nautilus, sitting with a crazy 20% pick rate with an insanely high 52% win rate. Nautilus support is a no-brainer. Whether you're playing with a scaling AD carry like Vayne or Caixa, or if you're playing with an early game AD carry that goes all in like Lucian or Draven, Nautilus gets the job done. It's super easy to land his hooks, and once you do, you're just a non-stop CC machine with your auto attack immobilize and with your E AoE slow. The damage, the tankiness, the CC is just unmatched in the bot lane. The main thing you need to be mindful on Nautilus is your positioning. If you do not position correctly to land a hook, you will not land one. So you need to look for openings and make space for your AD carry. If you're constantly sitting back, there's no point in playing him. Nautilus is particularly strong against squishies. Tanky supports can give him trouble, things like Leona and Taric, so try to pick Nautilus whenever you see the enemy support going something really easy to all in like a Lux or a Sona. He will be perfect. He is also perfect if you pick him with Draven, because Draven base damage and Nautilus base damage is just insane. Alright guys, and that is going to wrap up this list. I hope you enjoyed this list for the top 10 strongest champions in low and high elo for right now. If you did enjoy this video and it helped you out, don't forget to smash that like button, comment, and subscribe. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.